Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the LJLOU. We just witnessed Burning Court falling down to Sengoku Gaming after a very, very strong early game that just kind of went on a bit of a snowball from there. Of course, now Burning Court are back, but they have got to face even tougher competition here. Of course, that was just 2 1-3 teams. I suppose now a 1-4 and a 2-3 team. But now Burning Court have got to come back and they've got to take on Detonation FocusMe, currently undefeated, our super team here in the LJL, the Exodia comp, even if Gang's not quite in there yet. And Al, this is a really rough one to come out for Burning Court, because they've already gone down 0-1 in the match they were kind of maybe hoping to win, and now they've got DFM. This has got to be difficult.
It is, and particularly because of what we saw in that early game, right? Because one thing which we've been talking about DFM, and we will stop using this narrative at some point, is that they do feel a lot like G2. Right, they do. They sometimes flub the early game, but if they're in the game at about 15 to 20 minutes, they just rip off your whole arm. Like if you give them, just give them a handshake and then just like, oh no, I've lost a limb.
Hashtag no spoilers for yesterday, please.
It definitely ends up being this kind of thing where, like, if you don't have a strong early game, then it's hard to beat DFM. Burning Core did not have a strong early game. What are they going to do? Going to have to show something new.
Well, I suppose, but the thing is that G2 reference, I suppose I'll run on from that, because my own analogy, as I've mentioned before, is G2 if they were running Yellow Star as their support, because, of course, it is a very smart person in their support player, but it is, in fact, a coach. Kazu has been a coach, even if he is an ex-pro player, is in that support role, and Stan, is there a world in which Burning Core could maybe prey on Kazu? It's been done before already, this split, where Kazu's been kind of caught out a bit. Is that a route potentially for Burning Core here, or do they just not have the strength in bot lane to do that?
No, absolutely not. Purely because purely because I've just seen that last game, and as much as I wanted to back Proud up, as much as I wanted the rel to work, that was a bot lane that was irrelevant by sort of 10 minutes. And unless something dramatically changes, both in bot lane and in terms of how Once plays as well, which I struggle to see against this top tier team, then that opportunity to prey on someone probably doesn't come through.
Okay, so for all that Kazu maybe not had the cleanest of micro interactions, don't expect Burning Core to be able to punish that as well as he'd like. I will call out there were some decent numbers, at least of Burning Core in the last game, like Gragas, most damage in the game. Graves actually did more than even the Talia across from them. So there was some at least decent damage, but it just wasn't enough to finish anybody off, because they were into a mountain soul, of course, and could never get anything resembling a clean team fight. And Gadiaru and Yuki were really struggling to find positions to put out damage, and that's not what you want to see from your mid and AD carry. Is it just the Burning Core problems from last year all over again, Nymera?
Well, at least Rayfalky played well. That's what I'll say. Burning Core have been taken apart by most of the teams that they've played. It says something that a lot of the teams in the LJL have come in coordinated, with an understanding of the meta, understanding of their champion pools and what they want to play in team competitions. Burning Core don't have that. And actually, at the end of summer, after they'd taken DFM right down to the wire in that first series in that summer playoffs, I would have said Burning Core had a pretty good team. I say that they upgraded their roster with Gadiaru in for Yu-Gi-Oh! Coming in for this year too. But they have not hit the ground running. And I now struggle to see how they catch up, because they need to have a fundamental change of how they play this game, at least in terms of how they're picking their champions and playing around the map.
Well, I suppose that's a good way of putting it, but I think it is time we step away from Burning Core's woes and start talking about Detonation FocusMe's strengths. Frankly, they're currently undefeated. They've had some pretty incredible team fighting showings and a very strong victory in the end of last week, even if they had a bit of a rougher time in their first game in week 2 versus CGA, of all people, of course, when Nation and the likes nearly managed to take an early game lead and run things over. But DFM, currently undefeated, looking pretty good, right, Stan, as far as you can tell?
Yeah, definitely looking good. And speaking of looking good, I just want to say very quickly, thank you very much for having me back on the show. And because because we're officially unofficial, I thought I would wear my my favorite piece of official unofficial merch, which is this hoodie, which is totally from the Riot store.
What's hilarious about that? I'm actually wearing an official Riot Worlds hoodie.
I know.
So we have the officially unofficial.
Yeah. So this is actually the first ever piece of League of Legends related clothing I got. A friend of mine bought it me for Christmas about a year after I got into the game, and I still have it. And it's utterly dreadful in comparison to the Riot related stuff, but it has a mangled picture of Twisted Fate on the back. But no, Detonation FocusMe look even better than this hoodie does. They are absolutely looking not only like they're going to run away with this split as things currently stand, but also actually maybe finally come in and be competitive when we get towards sort of the summer autumn months, hopefully, and actually kind of show up, which is something we didn't
That'd
see.
be nice. That'd be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can't raise you an off-brand hoodie or an actual on-brand hoodie, but I can raise you a Bear Tibbers. I think is pretty cool. We can go back over here.
Tibbs is a little sweetie.
Yeah, until Annie comes asking where that's gone. But until such time as that, Mimera, tell me a little bit about where, of course, DFM haven't been in perfectly clean either. Obviously, they closed out their game versus the Hawks last week pretty convincingly. Fabulous skirmishing to really ram home the victory very quickly. But as we said, there have been some early game holes they found themselves in and had to team fight the ways out of. What's going on in the early game that might leave other teams a bit of an opening against DFM?
Solo kills, like a lot of solo kills towards the DFM laners, which is probably the last thing I expected about this team. But again, that's kind of where I started getting this whole G2 analogy. I'm like, oh, hang on, why is Caps dying in mid lane? Why is Wonder doing? That's definitely questions people have had about that team. And Ebby and Arya led the solo kill metrics in the LJL 2020. They were on different teams, of course, and Arya was given a lot of resources and a lot of freedom within the draft to just kind of pick whatever the hell he wanted.
Sure.
There have been a couple of awkward lane matchups where Arya's fallen down in it, but this is the kind of thing where he would have exceeded in those matchups and just outclassed his opponent anyway. So I guess if Burning Core were to prey upon anything, it's actually punish the oversteps within lane that all of these laners have been having. Utapon's been solo killed, Arya's been solo killed, Ebby's been solo killed. It's only really Steel in the jungle that's been looking really solid and not given any of those inches to take that opportunity. So maybe Burning Core can pop off in the early game because of that metric, but as I said, Burning Core haven't really done that so far in this league.
And perhaps part of that issue about DFM members getting a little caught out is that generally, Kazu is often just a touch later to the roam than some of our top-end supports. And at the minute, you'll notice the likes of Rels, of Leonas, of Threshes turning up in other lanes, getting vision down, and looking for three-man ganks with the jungler. And that's not been quite as crisp with DFM, at least in the first 10 minutes, so even if their team fighting's been good. Is that potentially something the Proud could look to exploit, do you think, Stan?
Yes and no. I think the Proud in the last game, that the potential was absolutely there, apart from the fact that they were getting absolutely monstered in bot lane, and as a result, there was just absolutely no way that they could leave the lane alone. Even without leaving the laner alone, they died under turret multiple times. Perhaps maybe they would have been better served wandering off, but then you just see the Jhin die over and over again anyway. For me, yeah, absolutely, it could work, and maybe it'd be nice to see Proud doing more of that. But I think that the ADC is such a pressure point for them at this point, which has been failing a little bit, that were they to leave it isolated, I think you just see more and more plays, and maybe you don't see the roaming from the FM support quite so much, but do you actually need to when you're finding so many consistent advantages in bot?
That's a good point.
Fair enough. All right, at which point, Nymera, we've talked a little bit about, well, maybe DFM lane is overstretching, maybe it's partly supports not being quite as quick on their own, but maybe that won't be such a big issue in this game. I do want to ask, where are you expecting the big sort of your eyes to be in the cast? Which roles are you looking to keep your eyes on?
Okay, so I look through these rosters and I think, oh, Ray Farker versus Ebby, oh, that's a pretty good matchup. Gato versus Arya, oh, that's a pretty good matchup. Once versus Steel, that's a pretty good matchup. Okay, we don't care about bot lane. So the top half of the map is going to be really, really fun to watch in this game. I think that any one of these matchups could be drafted towards, but the thing which has been really interesting for me, at least from the side of DFM, is that they've not specifically drafted towards any one lane. And as Stan was saying, that in terms of like, well, DFM, if they want to go and do stuff internationally, you know, coming towards the end of spring, coming into summer and autumn and all those later in the year, DFM will need to show a couple of these transferable skills and show that if the meta changes, they can change with it. I'm looking still towards mid upwards, though, from the side of DFM in terms of the real explosive matchups versus Burning Core, because bot lane, as we've been saying, might not be the same level of skill as the rest of the map.
All right, so Nymera has narrowed it down slightly, but not down to the single role. Stan, you've been given 3 roles to pick between. Pick one where you kind of think your eyes are more drawn right now.
Well, as excited as I am to finally get the opportunity to cast Nymera's BFF in mid, I'm looking at top lane because I think you've got a solid performer coming out of DFM. You've just had the only solid performer really coming out of Burning Court in the last game. They're going head to head. I think the game could quite easily be won or lost up there if the right pressure is put on.
Both those guys are carries. Both those guys have been willing to pull out some interesting picks. Akali versus Darius is actually a possibility, guys. Here, so
don't even. No, we're not even joking. That's probably their most played champions.
Yeah, it could be Flash Ghost Darius into Ignite Teleport Akali, and that would be a fairly standard and expected matchup up there.
God, love the LJL.
We all love it here, and these are 2 of our better carry top laners, and the junglers both could be thinking about that if the matchups in the right space to be putting attention up there. I will put this out just for propriety's sake, if nothing else, even though I suspect I know the answer here. Predictions, guys. Stan?
DFM.
Nymera?
I think that a blue team is going to win.
Very good.
It is DFM.
I still think, I think I'm still here at DFM. Unsurprising, guys. DFM undefeated. Burning Core very much struggling. Maybe there's a world in which, that top TV2 helps Burning Core out. Maybe there's a world in which Kazu gets punished, but it's looking a bit dark, and we do need to see Burning Core have a much more solid early game if we want them to come out with a win. Anything else you're kind of potentially thinking about in this game, Nymera, before I'm sure draft will be heading on just in a second or two?
I want to see if Ari pulls out another unique champion, because within his first 4 games, he's played 3 unique champions and then reprised as Orianna once. But then, even then, the Orianna was new to this split. So I'm looking to see if he can increase his active champion pool. And again, just keep everyone on their toes. Just say, we can play this going into the last parts of this split.
Of course, the Orianna has been great in the team fights. It's done fine in terms of CSing, but has kind of been caught out by 1 or 2 solo kills. I don't know whether Nymera would have shown you the clip of Arya getting solo killed last week, Stan, but you're aware
because
of what
it shows Arya in a negative light, so of course they didn't show it me.
Yeah, of course.
Cut the feed, cut the feed.
You are literally the producer!
Jokes aside, but of course, Arya has been playing these team fights exceptionally well and has been skirmishing very well, but there's been 1 or 2 moments where he's been caught a little bit off guard in some of those fights, but we'll have to see whether it happens in this game or whether he can come out with the victory with the rest of DFM, because we are into picks and bans. That means I have to leave you guys. I'm sorry.
Oh, what a shame.
But you're still in the very safe hands of Stan and Alex. I'll leave it to you, gents.
Stalix bringing it home. Thank you very much.
No, not I casted your name.
You're a good man. And now, once again, it's just me and you. No one here to protect you anymore. And we have got the first few bans. It's going to be the Thresh, the Twisted Fate, taken away by DFM as Burning Core. They take away the Camille and the Pantheon.
I'm gonna go reprise one of the stats where we brought this up about Arya in summer when he was on CGA. He never played Twisted Fate, but it was banned against him 50% of their games throughout summer, which is hilarious to think of. He ended up playing it. He ended up playing it once so far in spring, but this time DFM is the team banning away that semi-global. I wonder if that means that DFM do want to go towards something like the Seraphine, which they flexed between mid and support in their last game. They absolutely dismantled the Hawks when they played against them in week 2 with Arya's mid lane Seraphine. His first pick, it's a flex pick. Burning Core cannot afford to give a mid lane blind pick, which Seraphine can lane into because DFM played so well around it last time.
Okay, we see that lock-in coming in for Detonation FocusMe. I spoke a lot in the last game about my thoughts towards the Rel as one of the newer champions. Seraphine is a champion I dislike considerably more, but more due to what the champion does rather than anything about its design outside of its kit. I think that it is in a really, really good place. I think that ability to flex it between Arya and Kazu is absolutely great. Over on the other side of the rift, we see the Udyr locked in as a little wry smile appears on Initialize's face. We are going to see the Rel hold, but in the end, the Kai'Sa locked in with Kai'Sa in such a great position right now.
I wish I could do this quash on quicker, but I can't. So, Udyr and Kai'Sa. What does that mean? We have ourselves really strong side lane play from Burning Core, and it's an early game jungler which clears a better on the first clear. So again, heading towards those metrics of can Burning Core blow up in the early game? This is one way to do it.
Okay, we're seeing a long time hover over the Olaf. It's one of the champs that I certainly believe synergizes the best with the new items. It's going to get locked in for DFM. They pick themselves up a jungler to go alongside that Seraphine.
They do, and a big thing about Seraphine is that you can stand behind the Olaf, who is going to Leroy Jenkins himself into Burning Core's comp, fire the ult through them, extend that range, and get that multi-man teamfight ultimate, which does a lot of damage when you do go towards the mid lane. Locking in the Xayah, I know how much you hate that champion in terms of the current meta, but if you think about it this way, if Udyr is running at you and all he does is run at you, he has to go through all those feathers. You can Gale Force away, you can use your ultimate, and suddenly that Udyr, who is normally very reliable, just, you know, run, stun, job done, has a bit more of a minefield to trespass through.
I will accept that into the Kai'Sa it makes a little more sense and gives you some defensive qualities into something like an Udyr as well. I maintain, not a massive fan of it myself. I feel like, with the exception of the lack of mobility, I think the Aphelios just does what Xayah does better against the Kai'Sa, personally. But
There's
you
an
know what?
argument to be made, yeah.
That's not the matchup we're going to be seeing. What might be the matchup we might be seeing could well be this Orianna into the Seraphine as the lock-in comes in for Burning Core.
But my worry now for Burning Core is you just locked in the Orianna. What happens if they flex the Seraphine down to bot and you don't pick yourself a strong enough 2v2 on that bot side, and then you get Aurelia in mid lane? Then you've got Olaf Aurelia flying in with this Seraphine support buffing them up. You've got a really good ability to make this death ball team composition with really strong side lanes too. DFM still have themselves a lot of options going to the last two picks, and they're not even on red side. Often it's on red side where you have that last minute flex. DFM have the potential to do that pretty much right now.
Sam, bad news for you. We're not going to get Darius versus Akali in top lane because the Darius ban comes through from Detonation FocusMe. Really respecting Rayfaki on that one. Two support bans come through. That's the Karma and the Rakan, both taken away from Detonation FocusMe. Burning Core 100% believe this Seraphine is in the mid lane.
I think they do. I think that's because I wonder. I do wonder. Because I'm sat there and think, you know, they flex it. I wonder if they should have just picked away something in that top side of the map. Okay, now you've got that Rel on the bottom side. Definitely a bit more of a defensive laner in terms of it's more tanky than something like an Enchanter. It can all in something like that Seraphine support if you do go towards that. So now, you know, of course, you know what's in the mid lane. You've got a better idea of what's in the bot lane too now, because of course Rel can't be flexed outside of that. Oh, are we going to see Arya's Silas? We saw this so many times throughout 2020. It would be a real pleasure to get that back on the Rift. It's not going to be locked in just now. Instead, it's going to be a Gragas, which potentially could go towards support, could go towards top lane too. It's a triple flex. And we will be seeing the hover over the Akali, which means it would be the Arya into the mid lane and probably the Gragas into support.
Well, we'll wait to see this lock-in come through, and once that one's confirmed, we will have Detonation FocusMe's comps rounded out. The support bans turned out to be worthwhile, as the Alistair is going to be the final lock-in for Kazus. That's going to be with the Xayah down the bottom half of the map, Seraphine likely to be in mid with Gragas top, something we saw out of Rayfaki last time, so this is a take away. The Rel was locked in by Burning Core, leaving just a top laner to be picked up. If it's Yuumi, I'm literally going to leave. Instead, it's Aatrox that you've still got a play-by-play caster.
Lovely jubbly. So Aatrox does at least have the ability to mess up the bot lane, back line rather, in teamfights if he does manage to get the correct flanks. But we saw this tried by the Hawks in their game against the Seraphine mid from Arya 2. It just didn't work. You go into too many shields, you get punted out of the teamfight by the Gragas or the Alistair, or you go through the feathers. Rayfaki has such a hard time getting into this backline. So Burning Core, they have themselves their lanes, potentially winning lane up in top side, but of course Gragas is notorious at being pretty good at nullifying most of the current meta lanes, even fighters, carries, tanks, whatever. He just kind of does it all. And in the bot lane, at least you do have at least a CC combo for the Kai'Sa to start proccing all of that plasma off of. Maybe it will actually be through this bot lane where we said that, you know, things wouldn't be focused around, that it might actually come to a head.
Yeah, we very easily could see a lot of fighting, a lot of skirmishing happening down there. Got to keep our eyes on towards the Olaf as well, seeing exactly where that's going to be roaming around doing damage. With the Olaf, with the Alistair there, you've got to have an eye kept towards Evie's build as well. We saw the pretty much full AP build out of Rayfaki last time around. I think the opportunity is there for Evie to do it as well, given the comp that's around it.
I agree.
But if we do see something tankier coming out of it, not only is it going to be so hard to kill that DFM comp, they're going to have so much agency, so much CC, that team fight you just spoke of as well. Just quickly before we bounce onto the Rift, have I ever told you of my amazing skin idea for Rel?
Since we've never talked about Rel before, no, you haven't.
We've not done a cast together since she came out. So I said that a great idea, maybe like one of the April Fool's skins that they could do, is instead of riding a horse, she's actually riding a big grey animal with a long trunk, and then they could call her a relephant.
Relevant. Oh my gosh. Well, we won't talk about that because we don't talk about the elephant in the room. Instead, we're going to go talk about the rest of Burning Core's comp. And at least they have the ability to do something in the early game with the Udyr. That's a big thing. Because if you end up getting this Aatrox ahead in the side lane, where they can start pushing up the lane versus Gragas and then start getting vision down, that opens up DFM's comp to get flanked. And when this team gets flanked, maybe we start seeing a few more sparks of life from the side of Burning Core. Problem is, when it gets towards team fights, if you're not hilariously far ahead versus DFM, they do just tend to out-team fight you. That's always going to be the worry. So, gonna have to see how Burning Core do approach going into the early game and seeing if they can get some really big team fights away from our team fight kings of DFM.
Yeah, that's very much the question. I will say that even though I've been very downhearted towards Burning Core, especially after what I've just seen at them in the last game, I do actually really want to see them do well. I love an underdog story.
Yeah, for sure.
I just fear for them because it felt like the last game was the opportunity for either of those 2, 1, and 3 teams to sort of bounce back to start a bit of a comeback run. If Burning Core had won that in the fashion that we just saw Sengoku do it, then I would have looked at this game and gone, they've got a real chance. They're starting to have a bit of a resurgence. Maybe they take something against DFM. I honestly don't believe that will happen now because of what I've just seen. But yes, I want to be wrong.
That would be nice, just gonna get.
What, just me being wrong?
Yeah, it would be nice to have that underdog story, right? I'm just going to get our video back on stream right now because it looks like a little bit of delay getting towards that game. And why look at the official scenes casters when you can look at it? No, they're very, very, very attractive casters. Now you have to deal with those. So good job, viewer. You made the right choice.
Well, fortunately, we are going to be able to bring you into what is the LJL's match of the day. Very, very soon, we're going to be jumping onto the Rift scene. DetonatioN FocusMe up against Burning Core. We've both predicted a DFM win. It worries me predicting the same thing as Alex, as he is so regularly wrong. However, I'm feeling good about this one.
I really wish I could contest that, but we have our own. We've actually got level 1 on this bot side. I think Proud is going to see this out. In fact, it's just going to back away. It would have to be a flash axe at this point. DFM don't look like they're going to commit towards that kind of play.
I don't believe they will steal, and the rest of team were not stealthy enough, and as a result, spotted out by a Elephant, and they are just going to have nothing come of it. I'm making this a thing. It's going to happen.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. Oh, it's base Udyr skin.
Gretchen!
We don't even get ourselves, definitely not Udyr or the Spirit Guard. We're going to get literally Pizza Feet Udyr. And we're going to have Steel starting on the bottom side of the map. One of the things which is going to be different between the Talia Graves matchup and then, of course, the Olaf Udyr matchup, and, of course, very different matchups in a lot of ways, is that both of these junglers clear fast early. Whereas the Graves does clear quite slow early. So maybe Burning Core will not be getting 3 buffs, not be losing so many as contests early in the game.
I certainly don't think that's going to happen quite so much this time. I am going to call you out on literally Pizza Feet Udyr. I mean, I think that word does not mean what it thinks what you think it means.
It's like triangle. It's triangle feet. It's what happened with. Oh wait, have I completely missed what that means? Oh no. Oh no, it's like secondary school over again. Okay, well, we'll go towards that in the break. Fix any common misconceptions I might have had. Aria gonna be pushing up in this mid lane very early, gets a ward into the Raptors, and when you do, the thing about when you're playing the Seraphine in the mid lane is that you do actually end up starting with your passive, right? You get that double stack, that double cast of the ability. Stuff like Sona, and you don't get that, but what that means is if you start Q, you get really good wave clear on that first wave. It allows Seraphine to push up, get some vision onto Udyr's jungle path, and that gives DFM information to play around this all-important early game.
Alex, who are these 13% of people who are voting that Burning Core are going to win this? I want some of what they're having right now. The bot thinks that it's a lot closer, but actually, I think that the fan vote was probably closer to reality. We do see that early jungle advantage coming through, as you talked about, for the Udyr, clearing the camps just that little bit quicker. Bit of vision spots him out as he clears out the Raptors, courtesy of Aria's deep ward. Steel, on the other hand, is going to find his way to the blue buff just as the vision times out, so there is not that extra little bit of awareness for Burning Core as to where the opposition jungler is.
And Steel is actually about 4 to 5 seconds behind this Udyr in terms of the full clear, right? Which might mean that once gets first crack at the Pinata in this top lane, which is this all-important Ebby versus Rayfarki matchup. Rayfarki going low, and Ebby might go for a flash here.
Possibly will decides against it in the end. Body slam perhaps not available as a result. Rifaki is just going to find the recall, but it's going to have to go a little bit deeper because Evie is pressuring, trying to stop that recall, trying to make life that little bit harder for the Aatrox.
Yes, and Rifaki, we saw the first couple of Qs going really, really well for the Aatrox. That's kind of where the good news stopped. And a fun fact to you, of course, relatively well known towards the LJL community, but stop there, Rayfark is going to get aggressed on by this Olaf and getting a little bit of HP taken away. Actually, I say a little bit, that's about half.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario, really. Well, not quite worse because it didn't die, but Rayfarki teleporting back into lane, losing almost half of the health just from walking into Tribush to get a little bit of vision down. Good timing from Steel. Meanwhile, once looked for potential gank down bot. No flash bear slap this time around. It's just going to be a little back off coming out of Yutapon and Kazoo.
So one of the things about the Alistar into Rel, why is it picked so much? First off, Rel doesn't do damage, only does damage versus shields. Alistar doesn't have shields, he's just really insanely tanky. Second, if you're going in with your W crash down, the Pulverize comes through and you just get knocked up and it cancels that ability, which means that a lot of your early engage potential is somewhat nullified in the same way that you can deny something like a Leona with a Thresh Flame and stuff like that, except it's actually easier because the animation is much slower from the Rel. So Kazu in this 2v2, just blocking off that as we saw earlier. And nothing really happening in these lanes besides, of course, that top lane pressure coming out of Ebby and Rayfarki burning that TP.
I think it's fair to say that the top lane matchup, which I believe I drew attention to as being my most preferred in this particular game, I think it's delivering so far, and it's certainly going in favour
what's that
of
hitbox, man?
Rayfarki last time round was certainly looking at the stronger. Steel's going to start up a dragon, but once is up in the top lane, looking for potential first blood on the back of taking away a Krug camp.
He is. Rayfarki not really under pressure of being turned around on. You can't go for a 2v1 if one of your two can just get instantly one-shot by a Flash Gragas combo. And so Ebby pushing in does of course have the belly slap, the belly bop, the belly slam. In fact, that is in fact the correct word, which is a free untargeted dash. But of course, with Uda just being so fast, it's very hard to get away from the long range. Level 6 hit by Gaudiado immediately goes for a hard trade onto Arya, but isn't really leading to much. Very similar to how Gaudiado was playing against Ramune in the first game.
Yeah, that's just a little bit of extra aggression, a little bit of extra health points taken away from Arya. Evie, meanwhile, might get found out by once during this recall. We're gonna have the bear slap turning into Phoenix stance. Immediate counterplay comes in from Evie, and that's all she wrote for that one. But a nice delay on the recall and a little bit of assistance on the fruit from Gary Arrow.
So we saw Shockwave committed by Gatto at the mid lane, trying to get some priority. Arya pushing up, but is safely in the middle of the lane. No chance of really getting soloed out by any of those two mid or jungle players from Burning Core. And we are left with a very quiet early game, all things said and done. I have to say this probably favors DFM, because as soon as this gets to a 5-man stack game, I can only see their comp being in the advantage. It doesn't mean, of course, that they will instantly win all these fights, but we just know how good of a team fighting team DFM are, and they have a team fighting comp. It's definitely fitting into their playstyle.
Two things have just happened. One is that quiet early game looks more likely to continue, and the second is that late team fight looks like it may have just got even stronger because Evie has opted in to go for the slightly tankier option. First pickup is going to be that shred, the Bramble Vest, which will stop any healing coming. Well, not any healing, but most healing coming through for Rayfarki. So yeah, liking the decision making coming through from the top lane of the DFM.
Yeah, I think it's very important, right? Because you're going to be against two auto-attacking champions which are relatively low range. You're going to have to tank out a lot. It's not like the Camille where you can take a lot more bursty trades and kind of have them uncontested. Because Aatrox is a semi-ranged champion with the length of that Q, and then, of course, the E helping you reposition that. You do need a couple more of those tank stats to trade more effectively. Got bot lane for DFM pushing into the tower, not quite taking themselves that plate, and we don't have the level 6 with that gravity well locked in from Proud just yet. And of course, we've got to talk about Burning Core. They do have the Rel and Orianna combo, that the magnetic field into the Shockwave combo might end up winning a couple of team fights for DFM. It's just so hard when you've got the AoE team shield coming out of the Seraphine, and also the Featherstorm coming out of Xayah too. It feels like you're trying to land that combo into the backline, but the backline has multiple ways to disengage that. So Burning Core's easiest go button has counterplay to it.
as Steel starts up this Herald on spawn. I do want to give a little bit of credit, a little bit of a shout out over to Burning Core, who have found themselves CS advantages in most lanes. However, got to draw attention to the fact that yet again we do see Yuhi being massive, well, not massively, but considerably behind on CS. Now, contest over this Herald, which was spotted out by once.
Oh,
This is going to be 3 versus 3. Evie is caught out, does have the flash available, uses
Seraphine,
and that's enough to find Steel the first kill on Core. Do you want more? Aria playing clutch.
Don't have the Brooklyn boys here. It's from all the way in Shibuya. Instead, solo laners come out to their wombo. Shockwave comes in, attempting a steal. Doesn't lead to anything. And this is so reminiscent of what happened to the Hawks versus DFM. Now we have a combo coming in from bot lane, but the stun...
Combo? Are you sure about that? We are going to find the knockup onto Yuhi in the end, but it's Yutapon who's going. The lowest killer instinct flies through, as does the Featherstorm. The response is
the roots!
The perfect feather recall is going to find 1 kill. Actually goes over to Kazu as Proud is left running for the safety of a blast cone.
Some really clutch moments during that 2v2 in the bot side. Yuhi out of mana. Yutapon stuck in the Rel ultimate, but says, I don't need to use my ult to disengage from this. Rel has used a full combo. All that damage is gone. Saves the ult for the Q from the Kai'Sa. Ignores that. I'm sure we're going to go see a combination of replays throughout this. What happens in this top side? Rayfarky has the priority, but Ebby just kind of walks past the wave and says, sure, cool, I guess I'll 1v2. And in true Ebby fashion, goes and uses his health as a resource and uses it mighty well. And Udyr, unlike the Olaf, even though they can be relatively similar champions, doesn't get to ignore CC, doesn't have Ragnarok, and therefore gets locked up and dies.
Shockwave would have been very, very close to stealing away the Herald had it not been for the eye that had opened up just moments before and been struck down in its prime as Steel secures this. What happened on the bot side, though?
So, big thing is that, well, why did the combo miss? Actually, it was Kazu getting stunned midway through the headbutt. That's something that you can do as the Rel, but after Rel goes dismounts it, it's just so slow. Can't go in for the extra auto attacks. Autos are slow anyway from Rel, so Yutapon understands what happens as soon as he sees the mana bar and the combos used from Burning Core and says, yeah, I can definitely outplace this. Puts down the feathers at the perfect point and manages to buy enough time for the second E cooldown during that trade, and getting the huge pull through just seals the fate of Yuhi.
Crossplay fights all go in favor of Detonation FocusMe. This is eerily familiar for Burning Core in comparison to the last game they played earlier today on this very stream. Second dragon of the game is spawning. It will be the Infernal, means we're going to be seeing either Ocean or Mountain Rift this time around. Knowing Steel's propensity for starting up the various objectives on spawn, it's actually going to be Burning Core who try to turn things around and get something for themselves.
I think they will have a chance to do this. Arya's not moving down. They already have their first dragon. It's not like they're giving over a second uncontested dragon. Kazu almost getting stunned by Proud once again. And yeah, I do just want to say that, like, the Rel Alistair matchup is really fun. It's really cool. You get to, you know, use if Alistair holds his combo, he can deny the crash down from Rel. But if Rel holds the E, that little tether thing which ends up with the stun, if you time it right, when the headbutt comes in from the Alistair, you can stop the pulverize coming in by stunning him midway through the combo. And actually that ends up being a disengage because your AD carry's just been punted out of the fight and they don't take any more damage. Like that. That's exactly what happens.
Exactly. The headbutt pulverize does not come through, only the headbutt part of it. Steel was waiting in the wings. Fair play to Yuhi and Proud, who actually, I think, sensed something was up there, played themselves game fairly safely, did not give over any kills. We see a 10 CS advantage that's been gained, however, for the Xayah. Now we have a Herald that's put down the bot lane, which is going to take away another of these these 3 remaining turret plates. And the gold lead is now up past 1,000. Meanwhile, on top, Rayfarky going very, very aggressive onto Evie, who's going to chug up a bit from that barrel. Stay alive for now. Meanwhile, Arya sent scuttling away from the mid. Flash over from once. Arya lands a nice 2-man charm. It is going to be good damage put down. Arya looking for the safety. Is not going to find it. Gary Aru is able to just find the kill, courtesy of all of Once's hard work.
That was a flash and an ultimate committed for the life of the Seraphine, but it is relatively worth it. You know, it does end up giving you a kill over the Orianna, who takes much more gold and much more time to scale than something like the Seraphine. Already has the Moonstone, already has those Ionian Boots of Lucidity, which means that the CDR, or at least the ability haste in this current season, is getting up to the point where Seraphine is going to be that teamfight menace, whereas Orianna really needs a 2 to 3 item mark, which are much more expensive than the Moonstone and the Staff of Flowing Water combo to really come online in these team fights. Getting that kill onto the Orianna is very important for Burning Core.
The gold lead was briefly reduced, however, it is back up again to 1,500 gold on the back of the first turret being picked up down on the bottom half of the map. Unsurprisingly, yet again, we are seeing Yuhi and Proud just getting dominated really by Utapon and Kazu.
And, I mean, Utapon is one of the best players in the league. Interestingly, it was Paz, of course, who we saw in that last game on Sengoku, who said that there are only 2 players, or at least, well, there are 3 players in this league which I'm scared of and scared against playing of. And that's Ebby from DFM, and it was Arya back on CJ, and Utapon, too, also on DFM. And he said that Utapon and Arya are the 2 players he doesn't know the upper ceiling of. He doesn't know how good these players genuinely could be. He's played against Ebby enough to kind of like figure that out, he says. But you look at Arya and how much he's managed to do, even just starting in 2019. He's really achieved so much in the LJL. He was the best mid laner in the LJL in 2020, even on a team that was struggling so much. And Utapon has role swapped from top to bot and been so good in both of those roles across his career. And he really does just continue to impress. And actually, some people call him the best player in the LJL right now, the best bot laner at least, because he is 1v2ing every single laning phase because of Kazu.
Yeah, I think it's sort of fair to say, to be honest. I think Kazu certainly is the most underwhelming of these DFM players from what I've seen so far. However, Utapon is more than making up for it. Speaking of making up for things, 1 turret plate lost in top lane by DFM is nothing in comparison to the 5 turret plates that were picked up for DFM, leading to that massive gold lead you're now seeing on your screen. That's a 1,300 gold lead just individually for the Zyra over the Kai'Sa.
And speaking of making up things, the sky is green. And in more relevant things, Arya is trying to wave clear this cannon wave in the mid lane. So the next Herald will be spawning. Burning Core have all the pieces of their team fight comp on that top side of the map, and they might be looking for something onto Utapon, as the ball did briefly go onto Proud. Dive is a possibility, but with both summoners and a ultimate up from Utapon, bit dangerous.
I think this was more a play to try and secure pressure around the Herald. However, all of a sudden, with 4 people surrounding this 3-man unit...
Rayfuck is backing off for a teleport. That's important.
They may well be in a little bit of trouble themselves. However, it's just become a vision battle around that second Herald. No one actually starting it up just yet.
So I think DFM were looking to contest that a bit more aggressively, but then they realized, wait, Rayfuck is actually coming to this fight, has teleport when Ebby doesn't, and he's backing off so Ebby can't cancel it. We see Olaf going in with the Ragnarok.
He goes straight aggressive, not want to get slowed down or stunned up at all. Is actually just going to have to Ragnarok and roll himself out of there in the end. Nothing coming from that ult from the Viking.
Nothing just yet, but because Burning Core had committed so much to try and, well, committed a couple of people to try and catching out Steel, means mid-priority goes the way of DFM again. Gariadu is separated from the rest of the team, and Kazu might be able to get a combo!
Kazu goes so aggressive and beautifully pulverizes Gary. He fail flashes, and as a result, it looks like the Herald will be secured yet again. It's going to be Arya taking, I say yet again, for the first time this game, Arya is taking away the kill. The Herald is still going to be picked up, I do believe. There is another dragon on the table. The question is, will there be any kind of trade given over? We do see the Rel going aggressive, once going aggressive, but getting slightly caught out. Evie trading the damage back, bopping away with the exploding cast. Here comes Arya with the ult, flashed away from by Rayfarki. Now it's going to be the dragon that is the primary interest for DFM as they leave the Herald be.
Just a reminder, when we're memeing on someone like Kazu, he is still on Detonation FocusMe, the best team in the LJL so far in spring, contested but not beaten, sat at 4-0 and taking a commanding lead in this early game. Yes, it's only 2,000, but they have the leads in very important places, and we know how powerful these team compositions can be when you have this control tower, like it's like the flight control of the Seraphine, just saying, I'm going to be controlling the rest of my team, giving heals, shields, CC, and whatever else my team needs if you set up the right pieces. Those pieces are now in place, and DFM take themselves a fight to solidify their position in this game.
Yeah, this is definitely looking like bad news bears for Burning Core.
No
right now, they are... Sorry?
Bad news bears. I mean, there's no volley bear. What's up with that? Where'd the bear come from, dude?
Well, here comes a man-bear pig down in the bot lane. Once looking for Evie, has the Orianna here as well. That's going to be the Chilling Smite into the bear slap, overlaying that CC somewhat. Evie in a lot of trouble, flashes away from the shockwave. Once has none of it. However, he chases. He goes into Phoenix. He gets body bot back. He takes 2 turret shots, but he gives over a kill yet again to the Orianna, who's now 2-1-0.
And it turns out there was a bear. It was on the bot side, and it was the bad news bears for Ebby, with the bear stance coming in from the Udyr. Does a lot of damage when you don't even build towards damage, and is tanky enough to start diving underneath those side lane players too. Ebby goes down, but what are they going to lose on the other side of the map? They do lose themselves a Herald coming up towards that 18-minute mark. This might be used to break open that mid lane outer turret, which is so important to keep in these kind of games when you are fighting so heavily around team fights and vision. Guess we're going to go right the way back to what happened around the initial fight. And one of the things we initially looked at was like, okay, GaDeOLOU is really split off here. Oh, there's a bit of vision there. KheZu goes into the pit, out of vision, no counterplay. GaDeOLOU doesn't help himself out with the failed flash, and then everyone gets back over the wall. DFM in, out, get themselves the play, and Arya looking for something on GaDeOLOU now.
Teleporting in, looking to go aggressive, immediately going to land the charm. Are you kidding me? Look at that damage coming through. A little bit of help from Evie as well. And with that final orb, is going to be Arya securing the kill. Big, sad face, but Evie doesn't even get an assist.
I don't know why I find that so funny. Evie comes in. He's gonna get his revenge.
It's an Arya play.
He's gonna go find something back onto the arena, and actually Noah just throws out the party cast. No assist picked up. It's all the work of the teleport coming in from the Seraphine. Who says that the Moonstaff combo doesn't do damage as well as utility? Comes in, it puts the kill score at 5-2 for the side of Detonation FocusMe, and they set themselves up for the next minute or two on the bot side of the map, get themselves priority there, but of course there's no dragon right now, so it'll just be a little bit of vision and pressure for the side of DFM.
I do want to say in this game, even though things do seem to be getting slightly out of Burning Core's control, that I am much more impressed with once in this game. Feels like this Udyr pick is much more suitable. I believe it was banned away from him in the last game. He was looking for a pick there. However, the recall comes just in time for Arya, who could easily found themselves flash bear slapped if not.
Absolutely could have. And speaking of Arya, has completed that 2-item combo now and has the boots too once having much of a game, just says, okay, no, I don't want Alistair to recall, I guess. That's not something I'm going to allow you to do, and just walks up and smites him. Be smitten, KheZu.
Smitten indeed, which is a word regularly used when Nymera and Arya are in the same broadcast. Exactly. Meanwhile, we do see that the mid lane is being pushed down. That second Herald was secured by DFM. Second time in the game they're able to pop. Shelly, up she comes, and down will go the turret.
And steady as she goes, DFM keep rolling that gold lead forward. Now 2,500 looking on this mid lane in turret, but Burning Court maybe looking for an engage.
Aatrox has the flank already. We see the Ragnarok being triggered once, perhaps slightly caught out. Nice exploding cast, but it's only going to catch onto Proud this time. Stepped away from by once, keeping the Udyr alive. Meanwhile, in goes Proud with the magnetic field, drawing all the key targets. Flash through from the Udyr, trying to find the stones, but the multi-man route, the damage comes through. And just like that, Xayah and Seraphine both pick themselves a kill. Udyr, that was not the play he wanted. In goes KheZu. He says, what do you mean I'm the weak link? I am getting you kill after kill. I even give my life in return as stakes are served to the Kai'Sa. She gets her first kill of the game. However, the Baron is turned upon by DFM as they go 4 for 1.
Good heavens, look at the time. It's DFM's time to turn on the afterburners, and they turn and burn up Burning Core, who go down in a 4 for 1, all things said.
You don't want this.
You should probably just save your life. If you get caught here, this is very, very bad. If you die against a team with Baron buff, you don't get to defend the push. DFM already have themselves a strong siege composition, but it seems like it's actually Ebby who's taking a bit more damage than he wants in this mid lane. But of course, it's just a bit of much to do about nothing. Going back to what's happening here, Burning Core look to commit early onto Steel, who gets the Ragnarok. Cool. Okay, so once again, we've got ourselves a couple of teamfight tools away from DFM. The cast gets sidestepped away from once too, but you're running through the feathers. KheZu ends up getting himself on the front line, making sure that GaDeOLOU and Yuhi can't get any meaningful damage down, while Utapon and Arya get themselves everything they need out of their own kits. And again, this is not for the first time an LJL team that can't win with a 4-man Shockwave.
This is LPL all over again. Fight, fight, fight is all that's going on in this game. The 4th dragon of the game is up. Could be a 3rd for DFM, a 2nd for Burning Core, and teleports coming in. This is DFM wanting to fight again. They know if they get picks here with Baron, they can take so very much. Yet again, the Encore is going to land onto Proud. Rayfarki gets a lot of health back. However, he's still going to get stripped of his remaining health bar by the Arya. Nice Shockwave onto 3. However, it's not enough to take away any of the DFM players off the map. Once running for his life, as is Proud. Orianna not so lucky. Neither never will he be if ever he gets anywhere near with the big old body bop. It's going to be a third drain. It's going to be another 3 kills. It's almost certainly going to be game for DFM.
Relariana is a fine combo. Gets everyone into the same place to get yourself another multi-man shockwave. But Ludens and Nearly Large Rod, you think they're good enough items for that? Well, when you factor in a Locket, when you factor in the Moonstaff Ardent Sensor combo coming out of the Seraphine, it just gets nullified so much. Now Burning Core have to face down DFM after losing so many members when DFM still have themselves the Baron buff, and they're probably going to get themselves a series of picks, maybe an inhibitor too.
I'm going to ask you to cover just for a moment, just because things are very broken up for me at the moment.
As you say that, it does actually look like I had a little bit of a problem on our end of the stream. Sorry, guys. It is the nature of bootleg broadcasting. We see DFM get themselves that inhibitor and back out. We're going to have to see if Burning Core do get themselves an engage on the retreat. Doesn't quite look like it so far. DFM get out with their heist and get away with the getaway drivers. And, of course, let me know when you are back, Stan. Okay, right. Well, we have ourselves the start of a team fight from the side of DFM. And, okay, I'm going to take
let you carry it.
Let me carry it on then. No worries for that. Aria with the ult over the wall. Seraphine takes no prisoners, leaves them charmed, stunned, and in the death realm. It's a 3 for none on the side of DFM. And, internet be damned, DFM will be taking this game as they rush towards the Nexus. And, genuinely, very sorry for that, Stan. Go give yourself the Nexus explosion.
No apology needed. DFM, they continue their unbeaten streak. They look dominant doing it. Burning Core, arguably better than they were against the lesser opposition in Sengoku earlier on, but not good enough to pick up the win.
Not good enough today. Maybe they will be in the second round robin. Thanks once again to sticking with us throughout these technical difficulties, but there are no difficulties for DFM, sliding to a clean win early into this game. We're going to be cutting towards a short break to cover this game again, just in the post-game after we've collected our thoughts, so please do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
win here against Burning Core.
Themselves.
I think that was a little bit better.
It was going to come in for Evie. I think the team, but also Dubai pushed that far in.
Comes Seraphine with
because we see some really fun sides of both sides of the Alistar Rel interaction, right? Because you know that if Alistar goes in for the combo, you can stun him as he kind of comes into your AD carry and just let him headbutt your AD carry away, so at least they're out of the fight, and the combo doesn't come through, so you don't get the pulverize too. But after the combo's been used from Kazu, Prad says, okay, so there's nothing to stop me from going in with my crash down, because they use the pulverize slightly afterwards too. They go in on top of Xayah, use the ultimate on top of Xayah too, but Yutapon holds fire. Kai'Sa goes in, and then they ult, gets away from the Q. A lot of that damage is now gone, and there's no mana to follow up with something like a W or another E or something like that to keep the DPS up from the Kai'Sa. Yutapon ends up calculating the damage he would need to block relatively well, and they come out with a really clean CV2 after what looked like a bit of an awkward combo.
There you go, managed to pull it off. And actually, I do want to touch a bit more on Kazu while we're there. Told me about this guy we've kind of said, you know, he's the substitute for Gang. We're waiting till Gang comes back in. He's this coach. He's not really been playing pro for a bit. Had some interesting missteps in games in recent weeks. But this game, some of the plays Kazu were making were phenomenal, Stan.
Yeah, it felt like the only mistakes that we saw from Kazu were that interaction with Rel that was just spoke about there by Alex. And then once that interaction was taken out of the picture, as we saw towards the second Herald, actually showing a really good knowledge of playmaking and ability to use the champion correctly, which I think we all deep down knew was a real possibility. Picking off the Orianna in a quite stylish way.
Beautiful, yeah, indeed. It really was. And I suppose at that point, we probably ought to say, you know, Burning Core, there were some signs of life. Once, for example, definitely had a better game. You guys both called that out. You know, some decent ganks and pressure around, say, Ebby and the likes. Got Gariadu out to a couple good places. That gank onto Ardia in mid where he manages to catch out the Seraphine by flashing over the beat drop. That's all good stuff, but it really wasn't enough. And part of the reason it wasn't enough is that DFM's team fighting was just a level above. Nymera, I'll throw this to you as our last point. Tell me about those late game team fights, because DFM just seemed on another level in those.
Once again, it felt like there was basically no one you could ignore on the side of DFM. We saw the Herald fight where, of course, like, DFM just kind of outplayed. They had really good positioning, some creative plays. This is all very good stuff to see from DFM, who we know have the individual components and players to really be a threat internationally if they do end up getting towards that level of competition, or at least we hope so. But then to see like that, just the way that they draft and their decision making and just the coordination they have in team fights come to this level is really, really important. Because you look at like how Kazu is surviving a lot of Alistar fights. An Alistar which survives fights is normally quite a rare thing, but managing to somehow go in for an engage, zone off the backline and the DPS, and then somehow make it out alive too was really important. Then you've got Yutapon and Arya positioning very well, putting out the damage they need to, and everyone else is playing their role exceptionally within DFM. So I'm very, very happy with their team fight in this game. Hopefully it continues for their fans.
All right. Well, with that, we have got to say adieu to Stan, who has done his time here on the LJL for a little bit. So thank you so much for coming on. Pleasure to have you, sir. Any last words before we cut to a quick break?
I like the way you say I've done my time. Makes it sound like this was some kind of jail sentence. Which frankly,
tell me about it. When you're casting with
Nymera,
Nymera,
yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on this one, man. Yeah.
You act as though you're not casting with me 2 more times this weekend.
I know.
What have you done to deserve that punishment? That's.
I'm gonna go cry. No, thank you for having me on. Would love to be back on again sometime if you need me. Best of luck with the rest of the broadcast. I'll be watching some of the games.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stan. But when we come back, it will be myself, Nymera. Of course, Mass Swan will be joining us on the desk. And we'll be back after a very short break. So go absolutely nowhere. DFM will return to take on Stan, which of course will be, I should have had that up, Axis. There we go. See you after the break.